fishing.
It's just playing up at the moment, you.
Maybe we're going to find out something about surveillance activities, where dodgy cars are best.
Yeah,
So,
jolly good.
very good. Thank you.
Why do you take me?
Working now?
He's put it near his wallet, and the moths are making the noise.
I'll take this on my jacket, and it will help you for the Beckers to hear it. So
Thank you.
hope that's okay. Right. Well, I've had a little bit of stick about this. I said to Ron Geggis, if you need somebody to stand in when a speaker lets you down, I'll do it. And it's because he programmed me in and I've got a proper speech. But I've had all sorts of things, you know. You're not going to bore us to death, are you? I can't think of anything more boring than fishing. And then somebody sat next to me at lunch today said, "You're not going to talk about sticklebacks, are you?" or anything like that. But it depends how you perceive fishing, and you might think of fishing as this, sat by at the bank on a rainy, wet day, or even some days we have some sunshine, and you can get some delightful things, or you might consider it to be very peaceful and very laid back, or you might think it's a test of patience, fishing. But you'd be wrong. This is fishing. This is fishing. And you can see the difference between fishing as I would know it and fishing as many others would know it. It's a thrill of a lifetime if you do this type of fishing, and it's a very specialised field, and I wanted to give you some insight into what goes on this type of thing. I've spent, well, I can't, in case you got fed back to Rita, I can't tell you how much I've spent on fishing in my life. It would probably buy a couple of houses on Parkstone if you really wanted to seriously look at what I spent on fishing. But it's been a total thrill. And I wanted to go through with you, what do you need to get started on such a great adventure like this? Well, the first thing you've got to do is pick a location. And my secretary gave me this because she said, "You're so small, you'll be able to point at the board." And especially went and bought it from me. I fished in Kenya, Zambia, Caribbean, Mauritius, Australia. You can see the authenticity, that's my foot, just to show you what kind of a location it is, and somehow I took the picture there. But really one of the best locations where you can do just fine for fishing is Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. It's a wonderful place for fishing. I know some of you have been there. It's a great place for fishing. What do we know about Mauritius and what's it famous for? Well, I think we all know about the dodo, don't we? Its contribution to the English language, as dead as the dodo. And there's a lovely thing in the archives at the Mauritius Museum where the curator of the Museum of Natural History in London wrote to them and said, "We've thrown our dodo away because it was so tatty, can we have another one?" It had been extinct for 300 years when he sent that letter. And so there isn't the only place you can see them in real life today. There's two in Mauritius, one at the Dodo Club and one at the Natural History Museum. It's also very famous for the most expensive stamp in the world. The 2p Mauritian Blue, sold in 2011 for £1 million. £1 million. And they have a museum for it on the harbour in Portobello. You can go and visit it. It's really very interesting, and you can see the stamp on display. But for the people who live there and know it, it's not the stamp you see on display. They don't show you the stamp, but everybody goes there and queues up for hours and spends $10 to look at the stamp, and it's not the stamp. That's in a safe somewhere away.
We moan how much Royal Mail charge.
It's massively important for its sugarcane, is Mauritius. It was, when the Commonwealth preferences were on, it was its lifeline. But of course, now that they don't have the Commonwealth preferences, they can't compete on white sugar. But if you look in any supermarket, you'll find all the brown sugar, the Demerara sugars are from Mauritius. You'll find them all there. But what we've done is very interesting. 45% of their fuel is now on a different kind of sugarcane. They're burning it for fuel instead of burning oil products, which is a major step forward. And of course you have the giant tortoises. When I lived there we had two of these, and of course the tortoises are wonders at escaping, because what they do, they can stand on their back legs, as most people don't, go to your fence and just flop, and then they're gone. So my kids painted on the back, "I belong to Angela Fell," in big white letters so that everybody could find them and know where they came from. These things are like this, the size of this table, some of them, hundreds of years old. And of course, very importantly in Mauritius, the people are absolutely lovely. It's one of the few places I've visited in the world where I felt totally safe, coming back from the pub at 3 o'clock in the morning, or wandering around, absolutely safe. And it's really is a wonderful place. In recent years, of course, it's been important for tourism because of its beauty. This is Le Morne, which is really a fantastic fishing area, Le Morne, where the mountains are. So any of you who have been here will know that. So, when we're talking about fishing, we're talking about game fishing. And we're actually hunting what they call pelagic fish. These are fish that swim in the top layers of the water, hunting, not deep water fish, but in the surface layers. And the real target is the black marlin. The Mauritians call it l'empereur, the emperor, and it really is the king of fish. Very, very difficult to catch. Every one that's hooked, every 10 that's hooked, you might manage to land one. And of course, in recent years, we've been doing tag and release, which is extremely difficult because they fight until the end. Then, of course, you can look at the dorado, the sailfish. This is the fastest fish in the sea. This can swim at 75 miles an hour in bursts. 75 miles an hour in bursts. It's the fastest fish ever recorded in the sea. And we're looking for them. These can be, a black marlin can be anything up to £1,000. Records are about 1,500–1,600, but normal fish are about £1,000. These are about £150. And then, of course, we have the tuna, the yellowfin tuna in Mauritius, £600, £700. And then, of course, the skipjack tuna, which is the stuff that we eat in our cans. This is the stuff they can, and this is the stuff that we get in the supermarket. And then, of course, the most beautiful fish in the sea. Some people think it's ugly because of this face, and this is the dorado. And this is absolutely beautiful fish in terms of colour. And then the wahoo, Spanish mackerel, kingfish. This fish, the best eating fish of the lot. You can eat these. This is horrible, unless it's in a can. But this is lovely grilled fish. And this is what we're hunting for, hoping we'll get one of these, but we'll be happy with any of them. This is my old fishing club. I'm a life member here at the Morne Anglers Club. This was started by the Royal Navy originally. Before anybody knew anything about fishing in Mauritius, the Royal Navy started this club for sport fishermen. So, what do you do next? Well, you pick yourself a boat and crew. And a good boat will set you back £500 to £1,000 a day to hire it with a crew of 3 to 4 people, all the equipment. And you can see as I'm negotiating here on this pitch, you can see somebody in the background making damn sure that I don't pay more than I should for it. The wife watching me with great care. You notice also these reels, they are huge amounts of line on them, because a marlin, if you strike a marlin, it can run off half a mile of line literally in a minute, because it will go so fast, and you have to pour water on these things to stop the touches burning out when you get a marlin strike. So you can imagine what it's like. I wish I had a bit of sound to show you what it's like, because it really is quite impressive when one strikes. You think £1,000 might be expensive, but as Colin, I'm sure, will agree with me, if you've ever owned one of these, they leak. All boats leak, but they don't leak water, they just leak money. I mean, money just flows out the bottom of them, incredibly expensive. And I was only a part owner, and it cost a fortune. So boats are very, very expensive things to run. So the next step, make sure your crew have adequate provisions. You can go along to Gavarni and you can get yourself some nice pills like I did. Didn't work, and I'm sorry he's not here today because I planned to tell him that they didn't work. The best pills you can get, they weren't cheap. Or perhaps you can get something more appropriate, which did work. It was much more enjoyable than Gavarni's pills. Then you've got to set up the tackle, and this is very crucial because the crew depend on it. If you hook one of these fish and you lose it, you become homicidal. I've seen serious homicidal tendencies towards the crew when one has been lost. If you've had something on for 4 hours and it gets lost because the guy didn't assemble it properly, then people can get a bit upset about that. And the boats are like this. So the outriggers here are to spread the lines. So you have to spread the lines quite widely because you can have 10 rods out at once, and so you have to spread them so that they don't get tangled up, because if you do have a marlin strike, then of course you have to turn very quickly. It's the skill of the captain that ensures that the line keeps taut, because the minute it goes slack, they're gone. Interesting enough, when you catch a marlin, you hoist a red flag onto the outrigger, and that tells all the boats in the area to clear off, because 75 miles an hour, running half a mile, it would get totally tangled in the boat. So as soon as your red flag goes up, then all the other boats clear off that are in the area. And I said to the guy when we went on our last trip last year, I said to him, have you got a red flag? Because I'm sure we're going to catch a marlin today. We'll get one today. He said, red flag? What's a red flag? I said, well, put it on the outrigger, don't you? Oh, he said, we just use our mobile phones. Tell how far behind I was. What happens on the outriggers? The lines are on the outriggers here, and of course when you get a strike, if the fish feels a strike, it will drop the bait immediately. So they're on an elastic band like this, and the instant you get a strike, the elastic band breaks. It's a very fine elastic band. I only found this out last year. We used to use matchsticks on the lines and hook the line around a matchstick, but now they've got this sophisticated technology that breaks when the fish strikes. And then be prepared to be very, very patient. You've got your lines out, you've got yourself on, be prepared to be patient. And it's very hard on kids. I thought, and I know people share this worry with me, that I wanted to show my grandchildren, my children, that there's something more to life than iPads, computer games, iPhones, and I thought, I'll take them with me and I'll introduce them to fishing. And I did. And you can see how really thrilled they were. And a few of these pictures involve my grandchildren because I had to share. But really thrilled, you can see how excited they were, can't you? I mean, I wouldn't allow them to take their iPhones with them, but I wish I had done, because it would have been a lot easier for me to go, bloody hell, nothing. So you've got to be very, very patient. And we're looking for birds. So what we're actually looking for is birds. If you flick back a couple of slides, and you see this. This is called a flying bridge. And so you sit up there looking for birds. But we're not looking for this kind of birds.
That's right.
We're not looking for this kind of birds.
Does she do
They
something
come
like
incidentally.
Why not?
We're not looking for this kind of bird. It's this kind of bird we're looking for. And this is why you're up on the flying bridge today. And of course we're looking for frigate birds and boobies, because these are the ones that hunt the bait fish. And when you see birds, you know they'll be over these schools of bait fish. So you know that when you see that, if the little ones are there, then the big ones will sure be following them. And so you move towards the birds very, very quickly indeed. Because you remember, even a tuna like that would be travelling at 45 miles an hour when it's hunting. That's incredibly fast. Select the appropriate tackle. You can see all the wonderful things here. The hooks are absolutely enormous. I mean, a marlin hook is like 5 inches, 6 inches long. It's a huge thing, extraordinarily sharp. And you pick the right kind of tackle and you get started. Serious game fishermen, when I was doing it seriously, they use live bait. And some people think this is a bit cruel. I'm not sure myself whether it is or not. But they use this braiding rig, so they hook the fish up like this, and they use a live bait. And the marlin will go for a live bait far better than it would go for one of these lures. So this is by far and away, for serious fishermen, this is what they do. On my last trip with the kids, I didn't do that because they'd have never forgiven me. So I didn't do that. And then of course the outriggers, as you see here, they stop the line spreading, because you can see another boat there. We have to turn very quickly to get into the fish. And then of course the fun begins. When you catch a fish, the fun begins. And the real anticipation is what have you got and how big is it? And of course the first one my grandson caught was a dorado, which is the most wonderful fish. And you can see the absolutely fabulous colours on the fish. And of course, like all game fish, they leap out of the water. 10 feet, marlin can jump 15 feet, they leap out of the water. They will try everything to resist being caught. So tag and release, which we're trying to do today, is very, very difficult because they do not want to be caught. And that's the dolphin fish. It's dorado, dolphin, not related to dolphin in any way, but it's called the dolphin fish. And then of course, the most widespread fish in the sea in these seas is the skipjack tuna, the Oceanic bonito, and this is what you get in your tins of tuna. This is the fish you get in your tins. And of course, they're very beautiful fish they are. They're not huge. A 30-pounder will take you half an hour to get it in. So they're very, very, very strong. And of course, all game fish don't have visible scales. They are streamlined. They don't have visible scales like the fish we're familiar with. And you can see catching the skipjacks. It's a bit bigger, not so big. And of course, little kids doing it. I made sure my granddaughter could have a little go. It never got them off the iPads, but that was the plan. And then a good run of skipjack tuna, you can catch 100 if you're into a big school. And you've got to reel very, very fast because you could have 6 or 7 on at once. And Jack, you can see little grandson got a few there, not bad for his first time. A little bit bigger, and of course the decent fish we caught on my last trip was a Dorado. But of course you can see that it's lost its colour. They are magnificent when they come out of the sea. Very, very good eating. Of course you can see what we've got here, a little bit. Yeah. And she really did catch that tied at the hook. We had little rods for them. Just a bit of comparison between them there. Of course, now the hard part comes because I said to him, when you've gone this fishing, you've got to gut it now, Jack. You've got to gut it and clean it up. And he said, no, I said, you can do my Dorado, Grandad, I'll do the tuna. And of course, these fish are good eating fish. The Dorado is absolutely lovely white meat, and the tuna is dark and oily. It's not my taste. It's something you wouldn't want to eat here, even though you do see this in the supermarket. But the Dorados are super good. And then end of a great day, time for a beer. But it's not so great because there is a little bit of sting in the tail here. In that, it's a very sad ending and a poor future, because when I lived in Mauritius in the 70s, there was a superabundance of game fish. Absolute superabundance. We would go out and catch 10, 15 huge game fish a day, 600-pound tuna, 1,000-pound marlin, tag and release if we could. But in 1975, the government granted, being a poor country at that time, it granted longline fishing with no thought of conservation at all. It granted these licenses, and of course, the sport fishing was fantastic then, but now it's very poor. We must have caught 20 fish maybe, and that could have been 100 of that kind of fish 20 years ago. Sport fishing doesn't harm the fish population because it's a joke. The amount you catch is so insignificant it can't possibly harm the population. But longline fishing catches every species and every maturity from tuna, marlin, shark. Much of this fish is discarded. And in Mauritius, they have 4 canning factories, and the smallest one cans 50,000 tonnes a year of tuna. 50,000 tonnes of tuna. It's absolutely staggering. But the big problem is this. Longline fishing has caused this decline because some of these pelagic longlines can be 10 miles long. 10 miles long. And there's hundreds of boats doing this now in the Indian Ocean. And you can see them out here. They've got the snoods on here. All these hooks are baited. They've got buoys and radio beacons, and all over them. You can see them when you're travelling there. And the radio beacons to stop cruise ships and things chopping the lines off. And of course they're indiscriminate. They catch everything, anything. There is turtles, dolphins, everything. And of course most of this is discarded. The only thing they want from the cans is Oceanic bonito, the skipjack tuna. They don't want the rest of it. And they catch all this sort of stuff, and it's just simply discarded. And it's a tragedy. There's a strong move, of course, to create public awareness to stop this decline. And there's a strong move for consumers to buy sustainable. But it's a very hard task because most people, probably most of us here, haven't a clue what happens in overseas places. They know what happens in England. We all know about North Sea fishing control quotas, and we all object to that because they throw such a lot back, don't they? But where there's no controls. But the supermarkets are really trying. And they're trying to get people to be aware of what they're buying. And if you do look when you're there, look for pole and line caught fish, because these are caught by the native population on a pole and line. They're not long line fish, and they have to declare it, so if you don't see it on the tin, it's been caught by a long line. And these are caught by one guy catching them like this, and that goes in the, and one guy catching another one, and then another one. And this is truly sustainable, and all the cans are now being marked so that you can see it. It's good for the stocks, but long term it's really good for the locals too, because the fish will be sustained. The moment, it's very poor. That's it.
Very good.
Took me 15 minutes, President, didn't I? Was that quick?
That's, yeah, 60 minutes, 25 seconds.
Oh God, sorry.
David, every time you speak to the club, you always enthrall us with these tales of yours. And they're all interesting, fascinating, and this has been no different to all the others. It's been absolutely spectacular. Of course, we don't think of the sort of fishing you've been talking about up here. We just think about Southend Pier with a half dead well with the end of a hook, and you come back with the float. That really was fascinating. When time went like that, it was very, very nice of you indeed. So a big thanks to David. Our usual.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj.
Am I taking any questions?
Yeah, any question you like.
Please? Please.
Of course. Raj.
You were talking about the coast of East Africa. How close do they get to the shores?
Very close. If you go off Dar es Salaam, if you go up in the Pemba Channel, it's very, very good for sailfish, the one with the big sail on it.
Yeah.
It's the best place in the world. You don't need to go on a mile offshore, and you're in the really, really good fishing waters there. And it's still pretty good in the Pemba Channel, not like it was, but still pretty reasonable. No more than a mile offshore anywhere for these. But you need to be in deep ocean. They're not reef fish. They're pelagic fish from the surface. They're not reef fish.
David, last year in Spain, a fishing boat came into the port. Its deck was awash with tuna. Some of them took 2 people to lift that. What would they have been?
They would either be yellowfin tuna or bluefin tuna. It depends just exactly where they caught them. I would say probably yellowfin tuna. Anything up to £600 for a yellowfin tuna. They're worth a fortune in Spain, of course, because they fly them to Japan. And
These immediately went into lorries and they were gone.
Yeah, but in Japan, a fish of that size, I know the size you're describing, you know, the size of this table, aren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah.
I mean, they would be worth up to £1,000 each flown into Japan. But they've got to be in Japan the next day for their
As I say, they immediately went off in refrigerated lorries.
They do, and you can't do it from Mauritius, it's too far away.
The deck was that deep
Follow
in
them.
them. You know?
Well, the worry is, of course, in this long line fishing, which they're not doing long line in Spain, but the long line fishing, they're destroying the small ones, so they'll never get to that size, because there's no controls. There's pretty strong controls in Spain, so you still get the big tunas.
Sounds like Ted Heath put that regulation in.
Yeah.
When you pull them in,
Yeah.
why don't you take the ones you don't want to throw the net in? I'm sure not.
No, you can, you try to, but particularly with marlin, because you try to, but they are, the great interest that people have in sport fishing is that they never give up. I mean, 6 hours is nothing on a good marlin, 6 hours, you know.
Exhausted.
Oh, in a long line, no they can't, they're dead. They're dead, no, they put 10 miles of line out, then they just wind it in, and they're all dead. Yeah, they've been on there for several days, so that's about. But we try and tag and release, and it's been fairly successful. It's extraordinarily dangerous, of course, that 3-foot spike, bringing it on board and tagging it. You know, it is. Yeah. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. President, can I just ask a question? Was everybody happy with the quality of that microphone? It seems to be a very good sound.
Very clear, though, yeah.
Jim, I changed it from my pocket to my collar, and it seemed to sound better.
That's very good, yeah.
Put it in tight.
But any other business, any fellows wish to